So today we're going to have a lesson. It's not just for you, it's for me. I have to remind myself that as a Christian, the Bible actually teaches us how to resolve conflict. And whenever there is tension and frustration, and whenever we have disagreements between student to student, friend to friend, mom to child, dad to kid, student to faculty member, boss to employee, we have conflict in the world and it's always going to be there. So the question is, what do we do about it? How do we handle it? So today we're going to be talking about biblical conflict resolution, or how to get over yourself and love your neighbor even when they don't love you. Because let's face it, nobody likes being wrong. Isn't it the worst when you're like, oh, no, I got this. I'm doing the right thing. I'm totally on top of things. It's great. And then somebody goes, no, you're wrong. What you're doing is wrong. This isn't right. You need to change this. And you sit there and you go, you're wrong. That's a weird thing, right? When somebody says you're wrong and then you go, no, you're wrong. And it always ends pleasantly, right? We see this in foreign affairs all the time. One nation says, you're mine. They say, no, we're not. They say, yes, you are. And then it ends peaceably and everyone's fine. Not necessarily. So as Christians, we recognize we live in a fallen world. Sin invades and has sickened us in every aspect of our being. So we need to hear what God says about how to live out our life in the way that he originally intended and designed. So Matthew 15, chapter 18, verses 15 through 17. I'm going to be reading from the NRSV, and it says this. If your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault, just between the two of you. If they listen to you, you have won them over. But if they will not listen, take one or two others along, so that every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. If they still refuse to listen, tell it to the church. And if they refuse to even listen to the church, treat them as you would a pagan or a tax collector. Explanation on tax collector. When Jesus is alive and doing his ministry in Israel, Israel is not a nation. Israel doesn't become a nation after Assyria and Babylon take over Judah and Israel in the 700s and the 500s BC. They don't become a nation until after World War II. Don't know if you know what happened in World War II. Talk to Professor Chet Horn. He'll explain in great detail. God did not say, let there be light. So that's how that happens. There we go. That just threw me off. Oh, stop that. That's weird. You guys are in control back there. So what's happening is basically this. Jewish men are now being hired by the Roman government to tax their brothers and sisters to enforce basically not being a nation. So imagine you have a brother and they decide to go into business and they look at you and say, by the way, you got to pay money to me to keep you in captivity. It's not going to go well, is it? That's going to lead to a lot of tension. And what was the common practice? You didn't let them be a part of your community. So a little bit of context on tax collector. Now, if you're sitting here thinking, all right, I can't wait. I'm looking for it because there's some people I'm ready to tell off. There are some people I'm ready to put in their place because, man, they have offended me. I am bothered by what they've done and what they've said. Well, hold your horses, because before you even do that, I want to ask you some personal questions for you just to consider as we go through this. So here are the 5 questions I want you to think about. How was conflict handled in your home? When you grew up, how was it handled? Disobedience, disagreements, arguments. How was it handled? Second, how do you usually handle conflict? Between teammates, between classmates, between a faculty or a staff member. How do you handle that? Next question, what is your goal when you confront someone? Why are you even doing it? Number 4, how do you handle unresolved conflict? What happens if there is no resolution? What happens if the two parties can't come to a place of agreement? What do you do then? And then finally, the Christian question. Do you try to imitate Jesus when handling conflict? Before we get into the actual steps, I want to address words. According to Ursula K. Le Guin, an amazing poet and amazing author, she wrote The Wizard of Earthsea, one of my favorite fantasy books. She said words are her matter, that she has built her life around words. And I'm convinced that dictionaries are a good thing because we need to know what we're talking about while we're talking about it. There's nothing worse than somebody who's talking about something and they have no idea what they're talking about while they're talking about it. It's immensely frustrating. So words matter. So here's some definitions we're going to deal with. When we talk about biblical, what we simply mean is that this is relating to or it's contained in Scripture. How many of you have heard, oh, Christian, got to live a biblical life? Yeah, that's a good thing. As Christians, our theology comes from Scripture. We should pattern our life after Scripture. So when we say biblical, that's what we mean. But what about conflict? Well, conflict is a serious disagreement or argument, typically a protracted one. And by disagreement, notice that it's not saying anything sinful. It's just saying a disagreement or a conflict, or argument. And by argument, we don't mean you're an idiot. No, you're an idiot. No, you're an idiot. What we're dealing with is a matter of opinion or disagreement, and we'll get to that in a second. So, resolution. It's the action of solving a problem, a dispute, or a contentious matter. But now we get to opinion. How many guys have ever seen the film Inside Up? About the 5 emotions in a little girl's head from Pixar? Love that movie. Showed it to my daughters, and my daughter went, I feel angry. And I was like, honey, all the time. I feel like the Hulk. That's my trick. I'm angry all the time. And I think that's kind of a modern mindset for us in America. We're just angry all the time. But when we deal with opinion, anyway, I bring up Inside Out for this particular reason. There's a great moment when the train of thought is coming through and they knock over boxes and it's opinions and facts and they get mixed up and they go, which is which? I don't know. They all look the same. Just stack them and it'll be fine. That's funny, because how many of you confuse your opinions with your facts? All the time. All the time. Disney has some good theology. So an opinion is a view or a judgment formed about something not necessarily based on fact or knowledge. It's just your opinion. It's your preference, and that's okay. But now we get to the big word, confront. Ooh, confront. When we confront someone, we are compelling someone to face or consider something, especially by way of accusation. And then we get to that word accusation. That sounds like an angry word, doesn't it? Accusation. I'm accusing you of something. But what if you're accusing someone of doing something good? To accuse somebody is not always a bad thing. Sometimes it's a good thing. So we need to be careful about how we feel about certain words and make sure that we're all just on the same page. So this leads to the next point about conflict, and that is conflict isn't bad until it is. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. You've had that moment where you've butt heads with somebody and you're like, yeah, it'll work itself out, and it doesn't. And then it gets worse and worse until it explodes, and murder seems like a reasonable option all of a sudden. Okay, that's when you know conflict is bad. Let me tell you, your life is going to be filled with conflict. Conflict between you and God. Conflict between you and your neighbor. Heck, even conflict between you and yourself. I shouldn't stay up so late. I have that young final tomorrow. Yeah, but all my buddies just upped on PlayStation 5. I'll be fine. That's conflict. Conflict isn't a bad thing. Conflict is simply when two opposing ideas, forces, or people come together and they can't resolve it. And so that's fine. Conflict is not a bad thing until it is. I appreciate the comments I heard from Tuesday's message, with especially the idea of deal with today. Just deal with it. Just deal with it. And that's a good place to find us. Now, for most of us, when it gets awkward, when it gets uncomfortable, when we encounter tension, we generally respond one of two ways. And you've heard this before. We're either gonna fight or we're gonna flight. We're either going to immediately become way too aggressive, way too hostile. We're going to tell them to put up their dukes, and we're going to town. And we're going to have a knockdown, drag-out fight, whether it's verbally, whether it's physically, whether it's emotionally, because I have seen some of the text messages you people send. One, they're very long, and I don't think you're supposed to use those words when you're resolving conflict. I think it might make it worse. But at the same time, some of us go the opposite direction. Conflict, problems arise, and we immediately become not even passive, but beyond that. We just become negligent. And we go, nope, not going to deal with it, not my problem. Nope. And you just keep backing up and backing up and backing up until all of a sudden it becomes an even bigger problem. So to fight and to want that or to run away are both wrong. They both miss the point of biblical conflict resolution. So according to Matthew chapter 18, verses 15 through 17, we actually have a really clear pattern on how to deal with conflict. When you are offended, when something has been done to you and you're like, okay, how do I deal with this? How do I handle this? Whether it's student to professor, professor to faculty, whatever it is. How should I handle this? Step one, check yourself before you wreck yourself. Matthew chapter 7, verse 5 says this, "You hypocrite," which simply means that, hey, you're telling people to not do what you're already doing. That's not good. "You hypocrite, first take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye." What is this telling you to do? Really simple. I don't know if there's a student named Brittany. I'm just going to use Brittany. Brittany won't do her part in this group project. Oh my gosh, I'm going to put her in her place. Oh, am I actually doing my part in my group project? Check yourself. Are you upset with somebody because that's actually what you're doing and you're some oddly projecting it upon them and you think that by dealing with them you'll deal with your own stuff? Don't do that. Before the conflict even begins, before you even consider addressing them, take a moment, take a step back and go, okay, hold on. Am I dealing with this? And if I am, I have to deal with me first. Now, does that mean the other person is doing the right thing perfectly and you've just misunderstood? Possibly. But it could also be possible that you both have done something wrong, but you got to deal with yourself first. You have to deal with yourself first. So number one, check yourself before you wreck yourself. Number two, put on love. Asking a really simple question. How do you want people to deal with you? What happens if you hurt someone? What if you harm them? What if you offend them? What if you are in a really bad situation and you make the wrong choice? How do you want somebody to handle you? Do you want them to get all hot and puffed up and come towards you and just, stop it? Probably not. That's a headache. That hurt. I am not an athlete and that hurt my knuckle. Probably not. So you need to ask yourself these types of questions. First of all, is this offense dishonoring God? It's a fair question, right? You're not trying to police someone, right? This is step two. So you've already checked your heart. You've already considered certain things. Now we're going on to the second step. Is this offensive to God? Number two, has this damaged a relationship? On purpose or accidentally. Maybe a person doesn't even know that they did this. Number three, is it hurting other people? Again, on purpose or accidentally. And number four, is it hurting the offender's self? The person who's actually done the thing to be offensive, is it actually harming them? If the answer is no to all of these questions, get over yourself. If it's not dishonoring God, if it's not damaging a relationship, if it's not hurting other people, and if it's not hurting that person's self, you now have a conflict of opinion, you now have a disagreement on preference, you need to get over it. Even if you're like, well, I don't think that's how it should be done. Who cares? Get over yourself. It will give you a lot of relief, and you will realize how much self-control you lack. The evidence of self-control is not in how much you control somebody else. It's how much you master your own emotions and activities. However, if the answer is yes to any number of these four questions, the person should be confronted. The person should be confronted. This now leads us to step three. So you've checked yourself, you're putting on love. Step three, one-on-one, privately, respectfully, and clearly. How many of you have ever not prepared to talk to someone and you were just like, hey, I have no idea where I'm going with this. I have no outcome in my mind of how I want this to be concluded. I'm just hurt and bothered and upset, and they need to know about it. What does that solve? Little to nothing. So guess what? You should, if this is so important, if this is such a big deal, and if it is dishonoring God, if it's breaking relationships, if it's harming people, including themselves, then you need to prepare. You don't go into a test going, didn't study, I'm going to be fine. I had Psalms with Dr. Adrian Hinkle, and I walked into class one day, and everyone was voraciously reading their notes and their books, and I went, what's going on? And they were like, it's midterms. And I went, today? I did not pass that midterm. I passed the class, but that 52 was really embarrassing because I'm a biblical studies major, so I should be doing pretty well in my core classes, right? I did not prepare. And because I did not prepare, I failed. And the goal is for you to not fail in confrontation. So here's what you need to do. Consider people are not problems. They're just problematic. People are not projects for you to fix or to solve. They're not objects of you to play with and manipulate. Rather, people are people. And they're worthy of dignity and to be dealt with respectfully, even if they're wrong. We're all made in God's image. Therefore, everyone is worthy of dignity and respect. People are not problems, just problematic. Keep that in mind. Because life is messy, people are messy, relationships are messy. Number 2, consider the time, the place, and your words. There's a right time and a right place to talk to somebody about an offense. Probably not after a midterm. I don't want you to go into Jeremy Winty's office and just, hey! And start talking to somebody in the middle of class. That's not appropriate. That's not the right time. That's not the right place. And then also consider your words. Probably calling someone a jerk is not helpful. Calling them an idiot, you broke my heart, that's probably not the right way to go. But rather we should be clear in our words, precise in the problem, which leads to number 3, anticipate their reactions. How do you think they're going to respond to being called out? To being, say, hey, here's something that's going on. Here's something that I'm noticing. Are you aware? Okay. And then all of a sudden they respond and you go, okay, I've anticipated this. A little bit of imagination is involved. And then number 4, assume the best. Maybe you misunderstood something. Maybe they presented it the wrong way and that's not their heart and that's not their intention. It's quite possible, right? We're bad communicators. So maybe it's on us, maybe it's on them, maybe we chose one word when it should have been this. Intentions and actions get confused all the time. So assume the best until proven otherwise. That's it. Talk, discuss, have that moment. Now the scripture says if this is the end of the situation, if this is the end of the problem, so you have that one student in your group project for Dr. John Martin and they're not pulling their weight, you go to that student, make sure you're doing your job and you go, hey, you got to pick up the slack. Okay, is everything okay in your life? Are there things that we don't know about? Is there stuff that we can assist with because we don't want the entire group to fail because you're not doing your stuff, right? That's what we do. In fact, you know what? This will probably be really, really helpful. Can you come up to the stage, please? You, yes, sir. And I want you to stand right here. Just stand right there. How good are you at acting? Not good? Okay, face out to the audience, profile forward. You're going to be on stage left looking forward. Can you act like something's really bothering you? I don't know. You don't know? No. Is this bothering you right now? No. Perfect. All right, he's doing a good job right there. And now I need somebody else. Can I have somebody from over here? You're just going to stand. You don't have to act. Can I have somebody from over here? Anyone? Do not make me come down and point you out and ask you to. I'm asking for volunteers. Once, twice, 3 times. I see a yellow shirt with I think is a sunrise. Can you come up, please? This is awkward. See, you made it awkward. I gave you the opportunity. Give it up for our 2 volunteers. Thank you guys so much. Well done, well done, well done. This is delightful. It's like a dinner theater, right? No, it's not. And you just stand right there. Just stand there and you face forward. All right? Okay. You're going to be the person who has been offended. And he's the person who has been the offendee. So you've taken the moment, you've checked your heart, you've gone through the questions, and now you're going to go talk to him. You don't have to, just walk over to him. Awkward, there you go. Blah, 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 blah. You hurt my feelings. I don't care. But seriously, you need to pick up the slack in your class. The project is really important. I don't care. I got a Nintendo Switch and Skyrim has been re-released and I'm excited. It's thrilling. Okay, if you don't shape up, I'm gonna tell other people. This is really annoying. Is he gonna do this the entire sermon? Oh God, I hope not. Okay, and then she comes back over here because you've give him a hand. Thank you, stay there. The conflict has not been resolved. What do you do next? You get other people. Oh, you know. Can I have somebody in the back middle over there? Just anyone? Do not, please, once. I need a volunteer. I'll go, oh, there we go. Come on up. And can I have somebody from over here? Just one person. I don't care who. Wow. There we go. All right, you guys on this side, give it up for our volunteers. Fantastic. So the one-on-one has not worked, okay? And he's over there going, nah, I just really need to get that last dragon defeated, absorb that soul so I can do the things. And she is like, okay, we got a project. So what does she do? She goes on to step 4. One to few. So she has now discussed it with the rest of the group. I'm seeing this. He's not doing his job. Is that true? And they either agree or disagree. Let's say you agree. Then what happens? Then they all go to this person. They come, and it's I just realized it's one guy and 3 girls. That's fantastic. I love it. Boo. What? I thought you had tattoo sleeves for a second. The point is, so then now it's a group saying, hi, we all have seen this. We all have an issue. I'm not going to do the voices anymore. That was really annoying even for me. I'm not Jim Gaffigan. Can't pull it off. They bring it up, and his response is, nope, I don't agree. I'm doing fine. You don't understand me. I'm all alone. I listen to Linkin Park while drawing skeletons in my notebooks. No, I'm fine. This is how this is happening. So what have they done? Well, before they've gone, they've prepared. Once again, the person who has first had the conversation, they've clearly explained the situation to the others, and they either agree or disagree. Then what do? They considered a time, a place, and their words. And number 3, they anticipate the reaction. And number 4, they give a warning. Not a threat. There's a difference. A warning is, we are concerned about our grade, and we do not want us to fail because you're not doing your part. If you don't, we will go to Dr. John Martin, and we will let him know you're not doing this, not because we hate you, but because we're paying $1,500 a class to go to Southwestern Christian University for a quality education, and we do not want that to be poorly reflected when we've been doing all the hard work. Hopefully, that resolves the issue, and we're done. But let's just say he just really is into Skyrim. He's created a new character and everything's great, and he doesn't want to commit the time. So they all go back, and now they're in a weird predicament. Zach, can I have you come up to be our final peer? Give it up for Dean Zach Sherrill. Because now we have to go to step 5. And this is what step 5 looks like. In front of everyone. Okay, sort of. Scripture says you now bring the whole issue to the church, right? Because in church life, it's not the pastor who decides everything when it comes to this type of action. It's actually a community conversation. This is the last resort. This is the final consequence. This is what we don't want to have happen. But sometimes it has to. Sometimes, for the sake of the community and for the sake of individuals, connections and relationships have to be severed. The goal is to not have that. So, he's not doing his work on the project. They have now said, okay, it hasn't changed. We're now going to the teacher, the professor. There's a concern, there's a problem. We've one-on-one, one to few. They're now giving it over to the proper authority. And now, you get to walk over here. He gets to handle the situation. And if he's handling the situation, It's not going to end well. It's not going to end well. Give it up for your actors, guys. Thank you so much. Go ahead and take a seat. Appreciate you guys. Fantastic, fantastic. Why is it important? Why is biblical conflict resolution important, especially with that? Why do we conclude with everyone being involved? Well, because we do live in community. Consider the project, consider your dorm, consider the class, consider the university. What we do affects other people. Hopefully we're affecting them well, in love and compassion. Hopefully. But sometimes what's best for the community and for the individual is a separation. And that's not the goal. The goal isn't, yes, a new denomination because we don't like where the piano is on the stage. The goal isn't, Vice President Taylor Drake didn't listen to me. I'm going to go start my own university. It'll be called the Other SCU. I've seen that Facebook page, by the way. It's weird. What do I mean? I mean that there are random Facebook pages that are not sanctioned by the university where people are posting. I don't, because I have to contact Facebook. Now, this is all really, I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope this has been informative, but you'll notice that we've actually only been talking about one side of this conversation, haven't we? We've been talking about what happens when we're offended and we have to address somebody. Now we're going to flip it. What do you do when you're confronted? Do not think you won't harm someone. Do not think you won't offend someone. Do not think there won't be conflict between you and an individual or another group. There's going to be conflict. It's going to happen. And you're going to be the one who has to go, my bad. So what should you do when someone comes to you and they confront you? Number one, listen. If somebody says you're being a jerk, guess what? You might be being a jerk. You might be in the wrong. So listen, because when you confront somebody, when they're confronting you, they're probably nervous. And this is probably pretty hard, because nobody likes to have these kinds of conversations. They're difficult, but they're necessary on both sides. Because it's not enough to just confront somebody. We have to be confronted appropriately. So we listen to what they're saying. Number two, consider what they're, don't just listen, but actually take a moment to go, okay, am I missing something? Have I done something? Is there a part of this that I'm not aware of? Consider it. And then go talk to somebody else about it. I would recommend a faculty or staff member who you trust and respect, or a spiritual mentor in your life who genuinely cares about your well-being and your success. Hey, so-and-so brought this up to me. I'm not seeing it. Have I missed something? Yeah, you're a moron. Oh. Okay, well, thank you. Because sometimes you have to hear it from somebody else. My wife has the amazing spiritual gift of bluntness. Because if I looked at a student and I went, you're an idiot, you guys would be like, and I'm going to HR. But if my wife looks at somebody and goes, you're an idiot, they would go, oh my gosh, you're right, I am. It's me. And then you would fix it, because that's my wife's gifting. But for the rest of us who are bad at communication, we should talk to other people about what we have been confronted with to make sure that we're not missing something. And then, number four, admit when you're wrong. That's where I get the most amens, generally. Admit when you're wrong. Why is this so hard? Why is it so hard for us to go, my bad, that's on me? Because nobody likes to be wrong. Nobody wants to be the problem, right? Nobody wants that. But we are, because we live in a sinful, fallen world, and people are messy, so relationships are messy. So guess what? We have to confront biblically. And we have to be confronted and respond to that biblically. So why is biblical conflict resolution so important? Well, for three reasons. Number one, it teaches us to treat our neighbor with dignity. Yes, the person is being problematic. Yes, they are immensely frustrating. Yes, they have hurt my feelings, but they're still a person. They're still a person. And how I handle my problems with them matters. Number two, the goal is ultimately resolution, that there would be, that the conflict would end and that correction would take place, because we are all growing, we are all maturing, we are all growing up. And that comes with being told when we do things wrong. That comes with being corrected, with being disciplined, and that's okay. It's our pride that makes it difficult. It's our sin that makes us buck up against this kind of information and this type of confrontation. And number 3, as believers, we do things differently. I appreciated Dustin Sells talking about John Wick because that's not exactly how the Christian should handle conflict. Although it would be really interesting to see a believer riding a horse down the middle of a street while ninjas are chasing him on a motorcycle and he shoots them. That would be interesting, but that's not really forgiving your neighbor. That's murder. Because as Christians, we have to model Christ-like behavior, and we are empowered to confront the world in a way that doesn't make sense to them. Because this doesn't make sense to the world. The world says, oh yeah, hash it out, fight it out, have the Western gunfight at noon to handle your problem. That's not the biblical way. The biblical way is let's restore relationships. Let's be clear and precise on what is offensive and how we have been offended. And I'm going to treat you with dignity and respect. So, some of you have been offended by your professors. Do you know how I know? You haven't gone to your professors. You came to me. And guess what? I don't care. I don't care. Not because it's not important, not because your offense doesn't matter, but because you have decided not to handle it the right way. So go to the person who has offended you, your friend, your teammate, your coworker, a parent, a sibling, instructor, professor. Be clear, be precise. And then be aware of the reactions and the feedback, because maybe you misunderstood, maybe you did something wrong, and that's okay. That's okay. As Christians, we should resolve conflict in a way that the world goes, that really, really works. Why do you do it that way? And we get to say, because Jesus. This is what he teaches. This is where he directs us. This is how he points us. And he's God, so he knows what he's talking about. That's it. That's biblical conflict resolution.